Hello everyone, welcome back to Be the Whole You. My name is Gulveg, and today we're going to be talking about a very powerful, potent new moon in Sagittarius. This new moon is going to be on December 12th or 13th, depending where in the world that you might be residing. And this new moon paves the way for the potential of some pretty big new beginnings for us. So let's get started and take a look exactly at what's going on in the stars above. And then we're going to take a look at the cards below and see if we can get some additional information on how to leverage the energy of this new moon to serve our best and highest good. Now, the new moon, it's believed that the new moon, the energy of the new moon is felt the most 3 days around the new moon. So, meaning that this new moon we'll be feeling it like around the 11th. And we could be feeling it really intensely all the way up to maybe even the 15th, especially if you're in Europe or Asia where this is happening a little bit later. But the thing about the new moons and full moons in general, and I want to say this because this particular new moon does have the potential to leave us feeling impatient and antsy. So this is why I'm giving this disclaimer. I personally experience the lunar phases as like a continuum. So even though we feel the new moon and the full moon that's going to happen in a couple weeks, even though we feel the moon the most intense at these junctures, the new moon is like a new beginning. And it said that the intentions and the new beginnings and the refinements that we decide on during the new moon when the moon is black, it grows with the moon's light. And then at the full moon is when we come to a new milestone, and then those new beginnings then are fully expressed by the full moon, as well as any imbalances that might also be present during that time. And then the full moon is a time to allow ourselves to release and to let go. And then as the moon loses light from the full moon to the new moon, that is you could take a look at it as like a gradient of how we can allow ourselves to let go, to forgive, to heal, and to get clarity on what might need to be allowed to be released to, again, make more space for when the next new moon comes around. So with this new moon, be especially aware of any kind of like, not just sense of urgency, but a sense of like anxiety around things that need to be done, things that need to happen, because there's so much fire around this new moon in Sagittarius that it could definitely leave us feeling like antsy, almost like amped up, like we just need to go out and do the thing. And that energy we're going to talk about in a second on how to best channel it, how to best focus it. But if your new beginnings don't come to full fruition in the 3 days that we're feeling this new moon the most, it's not like you missed the boat. So just know that this is a process, and that this process will still probably be refined even on the 27th when we have the full moon. All right, so let's take a look. So the sun and the moon are obviously conjunct. That's what happens every new moon. And it is at 20 degrees in Sagittarius. So 20 degrees, 20 breaks down to a numeral of 2 in numerology. So it's about relationships and how we relate. And as we're going to see, this specifically is really highlighting our relationship to ourselves. The other very interesting thing is that the sun and the moon that's in conjunct at 20 degrees in Sagittarius is also conjunct Mars at 13 degrees Sagittarius. I always look at conjunctions to be within like a 10-degree parameter. And so we have Mars at 13 degrees. And as we'll see here in a second, this Mars energy is repeated in some other alignments that we're going to talk about here in a second. So Mars is associated with the zodiac sign of Aries, another fire sign. Sagittarius is also a fire sign. So we have the sun, which represents your identity, your persona, and also I look at it as the sun represents like the bright side of the persona that your consciousness is invited to embrace. So there's other aspects that are more about the dark side of the persona, but I look at the sun as being the bright side of that. And so these are the highlighted pieces of your persona, the pieces that are functional, the pieces that you're conscious of. And then that's conjunct the moon, and the moon is our feelings. So both the moon and our feelings and our identity, our conscious awareness, are coming into alignment in a sign, Sagittarius, that is defined by the energy of Jupiter. And Jupiter amplifies anything it touches. Also, what I think is kind of interesting is that we have this new moon before the holiday season. And of course, Santa Claus is one of the archetypes of the holiday season. And Jupiter is known as Santa Claus. And like I've heard other like astrologers talk about Jupiter being like a Santa Claus kind of archetype because he brings luck, among other things. I have seen it because he amplifies. It kind of depends on what it is he's aligned with. But in general, Jupiter is considered to be a lucky planet. So there is definitely support around the process of some of the more healing aspects that we're going to talk about here. That this is definitely one of those new moons where the amount of energy that we're being asked to invest, the benefits to investing that are like tenfold. So even if what it is in your specific life, in your circumstances, even if it feels really hard, this new moon is here to tell you that it's totally worth it. And here's why. So not only do we have an alignment of our feelings, which is the moon, and our knowledge, which is the sun, and our passion, which is Mars. All of these things are aligned because they're conjunct, right, in Sagittarius. But there's also this sense of clarity that is happening here too. Sagittarius is considered to be in general, Sagittarius is a very optimistic kind of energy. So we're able to, and with Jupiter expanding these things, what I saw when I was looking at this chart was that the expansion of the knowledge, the passion, and the feelings is actually almost like blowing up the circumstance so that we can get more clarity. It's almost like putting our circumstances and our circumstances underneath a microscope. And so just like, to be able to see a cell clearly, we have to be able to blow it up, to magnify it, to get that clarity. That's what I see is happening here. It's almost like things are being magnified, which also means that the feelings are being magnified. But with Sagittarius in play here, because of the more kind of optimistic and very confident energy of Sagittarius, I think it's more likely that we're going to have a bit more space around, or feel like we're a bit more fortified as we take a look at our circumstances and not get pulled into the minutia, the deep, heavy feelings that can sometimes leave us feeling overwhelmed, and then we don't have clarity. This is fire energy, so we're blowing it up, but also we're taking a look at it and saying, okay, it's more from an action oriented, like the very next question that we will probably ask ourselves is like, okay, with things being as they are, what is the most productive, kind, and loving thing that I can do for right now? And this moon has the answer. So with the new moon in Sagittarius, we also have a sextile with the south node in Libra at 21 degrees. And Libra is about relationships. So there's some real differences in the energy of Libra and Sagittarius, because Sagittarius, even though they're very gregarious and they're typically very, like, if you take a look at the archetype of Sagittarius, usually they're pretty popular because they're usually known for having really good humor and being optimistic and positive, and that kind of energy people really like to be around. But first and foremost, they are very self-honoring. So Libra, on the other hand, is very much about the community, known as being very diplomatic and making sure that harmony is taking place within a group. And depending on what a Libra is combined with, Libra can sometimes a little bit be too much in that, where it becomes self-nullifying in the pursuit of balancing the community. And Sagittarius is here to help us with any of those kind of tendencies. So definitely we have a balance here of the needs of the community with the individual. And saying that, there is also a quincux with Uranus and Taurus at 19 degrees. And Jupiter, the actual planet of Jupiter, is at 6 degrees in Taurus. Now, Jupiter isn't conjunct, or it doesn't have any like particular alignments with the moon, but I do feel that it is very significant in that it is part of something that we're going to talk about here in a second called a kite. And a kite is a alignment that once we embrace the energy of whatever that alignment is, it will allow us to take off. And so even though the kite doesn't really have anything specific with this moon, because the kite in and of itself is such a powerful alignment, it's totally worth talking about within the context of this new moon video. So in addition to that, we also have the trine with Chiron at 15 degrees. So the new moon in Sagittarius is in a harmonious alignment with Chiron in Aries, and as well as the North Node that's also in Aries at 21 degrees. Aries is another fire. So we have the energy of the sun and the moon that are together. So it's your knowledge and your feelings that's in alignment with Chiron, which is the wounded healer. These are the parts of us that are in our chart that are more, that if we were to heal them, they are the gateway to maximizing our potential. So these are the and oftentimes, like in alchemy, they talk about the prima materia. So it's the primal material for enlightenment. A lot of times wounds and shadows, especially the really personal ones that have a lot of feeling around it, we look at these as being things that are quote unquote bad. So that they are just obstacles in the way. But Chiron comes in and teaches us that these wounds and these shadows are actually the lead that can be made into gold. So that's why I mean, if you've been watching my videos a lot, you've probably heard me use this term, the only way to is through. And this is really what that means, is that the shadows and the wounds are the very things that once we integrate them, not amputate them, not, cancel, clear, delete, and just try to get rid of them, because that doesn't work. It just doesn't. If you've ever tried spiritual bypassy kind of tactics that teach that, healing is about amputating parts of our consciousness to then just embrace more light, you end up probably with a lot more issues. And that's because that kind of mentality is just about oppressing and burying something that really needs to just be brought up to the surface. Understand why it's there. Understand why it is. What is it that it's trying to help you with? Most of all of our shadows are maladaptive coping mechanisms that perhaps at one point in time did actually have a purpose, did actually have a reason for being. Or they are behaviors that are put in place subconsciously that give us a subconscious benefit, but actually on a conscious level, we can see that they're actually wreaking havoc on our lives. These are things that once we know why they're there, we can have more compassion for them, which produces more self-love. And then from that place of love, then we can start renegotiating what it is that would be better behaviors and be able to integrate those reasons, that the unresolved needs that are there, meet those unresolved needs so that we don't need to fall into these unhelpful patterns anymore. And that is what Chiron teaches us. Chiron teaches us what is it that needs to be attended to, what sort of needs do we need to meet for ourselves that will then produce a result where we are operating our lives more from a conscious perspective, more from a unified awareness versus separation consciousness where we don't really feel like we have much influence in our lives, and there are patterns and behaviors that just seem to happen on autopilot, and we don't really feel like we're very empowered in those places. Chiron is here to teach us what it is that needs to be transmuted so that we can graduate from that place of separation to this to a place of unification where we feel more empowered and we feel like we're living life on our own terms. And with Chiron and Aries, it's a big deal, because Aries is about our identity. Aries is about the sovereign self. And so with Chiron being in Aries and aligned with the Sagittarius new moon, we now can have clarity. Our feelings, our knowledge, so the sun of our knowledge, the feelings that's represented by the moon, is now in alignment with the wounds that are specific to our individual sovereignty, our identity, and what we believe to be true about ourselves. And because Chiron is in Aries. And then we have also the trine in the North Node, which is about our future. North Node is what it is that we are in a momentum to be working towards in our life. So our future then can also be heavily influenced by simply shifting whatever stories, whatever beliefs, unhelpful habits, unhelpful patterns, or just what we think is available for us in our life. So if we haven't tried for certain jobs, for example, that we would find really fulfilling, but we just really haven't put ourselves out there because we don't think that we have the qualifications, or we haven't approach somebody that we are interested in on a romantic level, because we have some sort of story why they wouldn't be interested. This new moon is inviting us to rethink those stories, that maybe there is an opportunity to flip the script. And with the new moon being all about new beginnings, you get to rewrite whatever stories you might have. If the story that you currently are living in your life is not suiting you, this new moon gives you the opportunity to write a new one. And so let's take a look at this kite thing, right? So I mentioned the kite. The kite is created by an alignment between Jupiter, that's in Taurus at 6 degrees. Then we have Black Moon Lilith, which I don't really talk a lot about in my videos, but she's at 7 degrees in Virgo. And Black Moon Lilith is our shadows. She represents our subconscious and our shadows and the self-doubts that we might have looming in the surface, just below the surface. And so we have, again, Jupiter in Taurus, 6 degrees, Black Moon Lilith, 7 degrees in Virgo, and then we have Mercury in Capricorn at 8 degrees and Venus in Scorpio at 90 degrees. What's really also interesting about this kite is the number. I'm not a numerologist, but I do pay attention to numbers. And so what I found was very interesting was 7, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like it's like the yellow brick road to transformation. It's like, you know, then we have this step, and then we have this step and this step, and then you take off with the kite. What's very interesting about this kite is that Black Moon Lilith in Virgo and Venus in Scorpio, these are not necessarily comfortable places for these planets or Black Moon Lilith's certainly, like, that's like a point in the sky that's considered to be of significance. So these are not comfortable alignments in and of themselves. And again, the kite is then just repeating the same thing that we just talked about on how if we put this much energy into facing our fears, Black Moon Lilith, self-doubt, unhelpful habits, unhelpful relationships, which would definitely be Venus and Scorpio, because Scorpio is about death and rebirth. And Scorpio energy isn't afraid to look into the darkness in order to be able to see the light. So just like you can't see the stars if there's no darkness, Scorpio is the embodiment of that wisdom, of being able to just have a natural knack for being able to marry the duality of life, and to where we're not living in this ping pong of like, is this experience good or bad, but being able to be more of a neutral witness where we can say, you know, it's all kind of a gradient. It's more of a grayscale than whether or not it's in the good pile or the bad pile. It's a grayscale. And sometimes experiences are both. And Venus can definitely help us with that. And so with Venus also being more about our relationship to people, so it's definitely the planet that rules over romantic relationships, but it's also a planet that's associated with wealth. Venus is also associated with luck to a certain extent. And number 9 is also about completion. It's about ending. And so we have Jupiter, which is expanding all of this, in Taurus, which is our physical, real, tangible circumstances. Then we have 7 degrees Black Moon Lilith in Virgo. Virgo is very analytical. So we're going to be able to take a look in a very pragmatic, almost non-personal way to these very personal things that we feel, and be like, and just take stock, like, does that work or does that not work? And Virgo will be like able to take a step back from the whether or not an experience is good or bad, and just ask a very pragmatic question: is it helpful or not? And then we have Mercury in Capricorn, which is inviting us, because Mercury is about communication and intellect. Mercury is also about perspective. And which also is interesting is that Mercury, which is associated with the god Mercury, as well as Hermes, and is also about being able to journey into the depths and come back up. Mercury was a god that could go into the underworld and go to, Mount Olympus and to the realms of the gods, and he was the messenger, so he could traverse anywhere he needed to go. And so Mercury is in Capricorn, and Capricorn is the billy goat, right? And Capricorn, more than any other sign, has an uncanny ability to be able to traverse obstacles in ways that don't really seem realistic, reasonable. It's also, Capricorn's also known as the sea goat, so it's also about being able to traverse highs and swim into depths. Scorpio, Venus and Scorpio would definitely be more about swimming into the depths. So Mercury is asking us to do the work, and clarity. If you're looking for clarity, if you've been wrestling with a decision that you should make, if you've been in analysis paralysis, or maybe even being held back by a fear of like what other people might think, or scared of the reaction of certain people that are important in your life, whether or not those people are people that are important because personal importance, because you love them, or people that just have a lot of authority in your life, such as a boss, that if you've been held back by any of these kind of things, Mercury in Capricorn is saying that when you start doing the things that you're most scared of, that is when more clarity will come. So clarity and results are very much tied to action. There is very much a cerebral kind of piece here where we're being asked to take a new perspective, but because Sagittarius and Aries, and the primary element of this new moon is fire, the way that we are going to get more clarity is by taking those first small steps that are uncomfortable. So really, it may seem counterintuitive, but if we start aligning ourselves with the things that we would like to do but we're scared to do, or we have a hidden desire to let people know about us, that is probably a good indication that that's the way to go. that's the direction. If you're wondering like what direction to go, and you have one direction where you're very comfortable moving in that direction and the benefit is probably mediocre, and then on one end you have a uncomfortable path you could go in, and the benefit may either be unknown because maybe it's something you've never tried before, or the benefit could be really great, but the risk to ego, the risk to confidence, the risk to being seen is so much greater, and it feels really intimidating. This new moon would definitely invite you to strongly consider the path less traveled. Sagittarius is all about new exploration, pioneering spirit, and having enough confidence and self-esteem, almost to a point where it almost seems like unrealistic self-esteem. But that's sometimes what it takes in order to overcome these internal fears, to do a new thing that we've never done before, or to approach even an existing thing that keeps coming up from a new perspective, and perhaps do things just a little bit differently this time. So let's see if there's anything else in here that, so the one thing that I did write here was that we will also have enhanced abilities to set boundaries with others, and also to detach from other people's opinions. So this new moon is all about honoring yourself. And if you've been waiting for the quote unquote right time to try something that may be a little feeling overwhelming or make you nervous, now's the time to do it. So if you've been thinking about launching that new business, if you've been thinking about approaching that person that you might secretly have a crush on, if you've been wanting to approach somebody to create a new friendship, if you've been thinking about going back to school or getting some different training, taking just the first small little steps will open up a very, because the kite is here, will open up. It's almost like you peek. You don't even have to open the door completely. All you have to do is just crack the door a little bit and just peek in, and it's like this has the ability to take just that little bit of effort, and like a whole new world opens up. So let's take a look and see what the cards have to say. So I invite you to set the intention that like whatever part of this reading here that is most pertinent to you and your circumstances, that part of the message will be highlighted to you, that you're like, oh, I know that part of the message is for me. And let's ask Divine Highest Selves, how might we best leverage this new moon in Sagittarius to serve our best and highest good? Okay. This is exciting. So we have the Ace of Swords. This is the very first card that comes up. This is all about success, yo. It's all about success. And the very first thing that comes to my mind is that Mercury and Capricorn part of the kite. And because the swords is about intellect, and it's about decision making. It's about communication as well. And as you can see here, it is piercing this crown, releasing this light. It's about direction, it's about conviction, and it's about it's very much an energy of like, just do it. And then that brings us to the Nine of Pentacles, which is another very fortuitous card, where I always look at the Nine of Pentacles as being the perfect representation of how we can combine the law of attraction, which is symbolized by her hawk here. She sends the hawk to go hunt down that which her spirit is longing for, that which she desires, as well as practical action. So it isn't just about manifestation. It isn't just about attracting. Like, we also have to show up and do the thing when the universe calls us to. So it's about right action at the right time. And the Nine of Pentacles here, in this card, I think it's very interesting that there is this like walkway of gold coins that leads to the temple. So it is about a step-by-step approach and marrying the sacred that we usually consider to be above and beyond mundane reality with mundane reality. Mundane reality is sacred. What we experience here, it's as above, so below. That's why we do the tarot with the astrology, is that in these videos, my intention is to demonstrate that connection of what is happening in our minds, what is happening on planes of consciousness that are less tangible, our emotions, our minds, our subconscious, our energy. It does have a representation here in the mundane physical 3D world. So the Nine of Pentacles and what it is that this new moon is inviting us to do is to know that facing the fears, facing the things that we may not want to do, which might even come up as like opportunities. For example, the opportunity to do public speaking is something that could induce major anxiety and fear in a person, even though it's a good thing. So facing those kind of things, or perhaps some sort of pattern comes up this month where, or this next 2 weeks, where it seems like just like you know that this is something that's happened in the past that either you failed at or was uncomfortable, that you don't want to have happen again. And so then you see this thing happening again and you're like, you're not happy about it. This new moon is giving us an opportunity to actually relate to that circumstance a little bit differently and be able to transmute it from a perspective of what is going to benefit me the most. What is going to honor me the most? And I know that for people who are spiritual seekers and more existential, those kind of questions can feel very self-absorbed, selfish. But the thing is that your entire life is a ripple effect that is based on your relationship to yourself. So it's not that we have to be cut off from and not have responsibility for how our actions affect others, but we do need to honor our needs and our desires and our own aspirations within the context of the community, and expect some sort of reciprocation from others that we're partnering with, or from our external circumstances in order to be able to move forward. So this is giving those of us who, definitely those of us who have more of a tendency to do things for others, to overgive, to maybe have like what I call the disease to please, those kind of things. It definitely gives us an opportunity to move past those kind of patterns. And this I'm bringing up because the next card is the Three of Pentacles reversed. So the new perspective and the way to move forward that is going to be in alignment with the sacred sovereign self to meet our primary physical needs, and to be able to give us the resources that are needed in order to be able to move forward as an individual, which actually as a byproduct will allow us to be of greater service to others, is probably going to come in the package of seeing some sort of imbalance within a group that we're part of. So this could be family, especially with the holiday season, because we're more usually more connected, more in communication with our family. This could be close friends, or it could even be business partners, co-workers, and so on and so forth. So some sort of group that we are part of or affiliated with in some sort of way, we're gonna say like, you know what, this dynamic doesn't work for me anymore, or the way that this person within the organization, how they interact with me, I'm just not okay with. It's going to come in the package of some sort of boundary that we have to set, some sort of renegotiating that we might need to do in order to make sure that our needs are met. We may need to have to say no when typically we might be more prone to say yes to certain invitations or demands of our time, energy, and money. Well, demands of anything from us, actually. So just know that if and when that comes up, whether or not it's in a conversation with somebody, or it's with a change at your work or within the family, that if and when this comes up, that is probably that little doorway that is being asked to just be creaked open. You don't have to kick it open and say, you know, absolutely not, this is not okay, you know, and be super forceful with it, which could happen with as much fire as happening in this new moon. We don't have to go overboard, but this is an opportunity to ask ourselves, with the changes that are occurring or the dynamic that I'm seeing here that's not working for me, what is it that I need within this to feel like my needs are being met and to feel like my time and my energy is being honored? So, yeah. All right, well, I do hope that you find that this new moon is purifying, and at the end of the day, even if there's hard things, I do hope that you do find it, that at the end of the day, it leaves you more free, because Sagittarius and Aries to a certain extent too, both very much are about personal freedom and empowerment. So my hope for everyone out there is that at the end of the day, that this energy, even if parts of it are a little uncomfortable, that in 2 weeks from now, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I actually do feel better, even though I did the hard thing. So that's my hope for everyone, including myself. All right. I hope that you all have well, I actually won't be talking with you probably until after Christmas. So have a happy holiday season, and I will see you before the new year. If you are needing a reading, you know, the new year usually is a good time for people to get a reading. Or if you are needing some external assistance with overcoming any kind of inner child wounds, shadows, pattern mitigation, which is when unhelpful patterns show up and it just seems like no matter what it is that you try to do differently, like the same type of result typically happens. If that kind of stuff is happening for you, I'm actually really good at assisting with that. So feel free to take a look at BeTheWholeYou.com with just the letter U. And you can book a complimentary consult with me. I'm making that available now. It's a complimentary 15-minute phone consultation. Otherwise, if you would like to just cut to the chase and just get some things done, now's a really good time to do it with this new moon in Sagittarius. I have some limited availability, so take a look at the link below. All right, everyone. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.